Yeah. Well, we're on. Let's try and stay on time. Those that can't get signed on in time, they'll just miss some of the first stuff. So we'll get this show up and running. Good afternoon, everyone. As usual, this is Steve Razor Gillette, and I'll be your host today. As usual, Bruce Alcock is pushing all the buttons in the background to make things work. One of the things that we hadn't been doing that we've been asked to do, and that is to introduce all of the board members of NRail so you get a chance to see who they are. So I'm one of them. Bruce, if you'll say something, so you'll come to the top.
Hi, I'm right here.
Bruce is the secretary. John Wallace.
I'm here.
John is our president, and Paul Musselman.
Here I am.
He's on the board. Let's see who else we have on the board that I can see. Egger, he's here, and
You got Fei Chin as well.
Pardon me?
Fei Chin is on.
Now Fei is on, and Peter Truehurst. Let's see, Fei, have you waved your hand so people can see who you are and say something so you come up?
Steve.
Yes.
Steve Jackson.
Steve Jackson is here.
Yep.
Let's
Here's Steve Jackson. If you want to learn more about me, you can look in the newsletter. There's a little intro on me in there.
Yep, and he'll be up next month speaking. And Peter Truehurst. If he'll make a noise and wave his hand, we'll get him on here. And that's about all I've seen. Are there any other board members that are on tonight that I've missed?
Fraser, we've got two other people who we probably want to introduce. First, we've got Steve Stallnaker, who's Mr. Newsletter.
Yep, Steve makes noise.
And we've got John Doring, who has just been elected a board member to the NMRA, and he's on our advisory committee, but I don't think he's got his video up right now.
Let's see. I've got it here so far.
Oh, there you go.
Listen.
Hi, John.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone.
All right. Well, with that, that is most of our board, and so we are going to go ahead and get this thing rolling. A couple of things to mention. Next month's meeting the schedule has been changed, and the date now is June the 19th, not the 12th, June the 19th. Our short topic is going to be how to take a piece of 12 gauge zip wire that you use underneath the InterMountain module and make a crepe myrtle or a lilac bush out of it. And then Digcom Designs, Carl Rodriguez is going to talk about what he has to offer. Steve Jackson will show us his home layout. And then John Doring is going to confess, apparently. His title of this thing is Confessions of an Armchair Modeler. And that'll be up next month. So we hope to have everybody back for that. But this month, our three topics we have, we're not going to have a short topic this month, but our vendor presentation is by Glenn Bramer of InterMountain. And then Ali Shahriary will talk about his home layout. And then Ken Harstine will be our main presenter, where he's going to talk about modeling and 3D printing and all sorts of good stuff. So Glenn, are you here and are you ready to rock and roll?
I am, yeah. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. All right. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up? Good? Excellent. So good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. My name is Glenn Bramer. I'm the marketing director from InterMountain Railway Company here in Colorado. I love the opportunity to get out there, and my cat in the background supports me, to get out there and meet with you guys and talk about what we're doing in InterMountain. I want to keep this very informal, back and forth. So, I'm going to sit here and run off in the mouth for a few minutes, but I do want to be able to answer any questions you have on anything, anything from things that are up and coming that you've had questions about, or how things are made, or the process, and anything really. This is just, I know we're limited to 10 minutes. And also, if we don't get to anything today and you still have questions, I certainly want to put it out there that you can always give me a call on InterMountain. I'll give my phone number and email address at the end. All right, so what we're doing in InterMountain. So we do have a fair number of N-scale projects going on. This month we are shipping our N-scale 4750 cubic foot 3-bay ribbed hoppers. We have something like 19 different roads in these. They do feature etched metal walkways, metal wheel sets, and body mounted couplers. So they're shipping right now. We are in the final phases of finishing up a run of N-scale 5161 Trinity hoppers. And again, a large selection of road numbers to kind of fill out people's layouts and get them going. But the thing I really wanted to talk about today is the projects we're doing next. As everyone knows, in 2018, our primary production facility closed unexpectedly. It really caught us as a body blow, and we had to kind of double down and retrench a little bit. But we're now at the point where we've been producing. So in the last 18 months or so, we've produced about 27 different model projects. And it was only in April that we shipped our first HO scale locomotive. Locomotive production is a little bit more daunting than rolling stock when you're finding new factories. You kind of have to make sure and qualify them a little bit before you give them a locomotive project. So it isn't, so getting that ball rolling took a little bit of time. We are today, you guys are the first to hear about it. We are in the quoting phase, so we're actually starting active production of our brand new N-scale F7 A and Bs. So I'll talk a little bit about the roads we're doing, and then I want to talk about the brand new drive we've designed for this locomotive. Let's see, for the F7A, we're doing 16 different paint schemes. The models will feature etched metal vent panels and numerous lighting functions. The units will be available in DC, DCC, and DCC with sound. The sound will be ESU. All the decoders will be ESU. So it'll be select and Loc Sound V5 decoders. We're actually using we'll talk about the actual drive in a minute, but we're super excited about that. And so 16 different roads for A units and 15 matching B units. The only one without a matching B unit is Ohio Central. All the others will have matching B units. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to attempt to share my screen. And I want to show you some CAD photos of the drive we've designed and we're going into production with. Let me see, make sure I can get this to work. All right, so if you guys can see this is an all new N-scale drive we designed. All the gray you see there is die cast, so the drive is very heavy. We've really tried to go for filling up as much space as possible with weight. The electronics are all LED and is going to feature not only prototypical correct headlights, so single or double, including Mars lights. It will have separate LEDs for the number boards, and it will have a reverse direction light. Like I said, the decoders are all ESU based on a motherboard and an X18 connector design. So they'll be easy to interchange and swap out without any soldering from the motherboard. We've also changed the truck design. We are doing wired soldered trucks. We're going away from the copper pickup strips that we've done in the past. The other thing that's changed on this particular model is we are going with body mounted couplers. So we don't have, because it is still a split chassis design, a split frame design, but we've gone with a hemispherical split instead of longitudinal. The reason we still, even though we're doing wired trucks to the motherboard, the reason we still have a split frame design is so that we can do a wireless speaker. So the speaker, let me see if I can get this to work right. Well, I'll get to the speaker in a minute. It will use LED boards, LED light boards in the front and rear, as we mentioned before. There's a picture, and you notice it'll use a single LED board for all lighting configurations. So you won't have to swap out lighting boards for different, if you have single or double headlights, and if you actually even take a look, there are LEDs for ditch lights because there are a few F units that prototypically had really rock lights down there. And there you see the speaker cutout. What we're doing with the speakers, we're using a small sugar cube speaker in the same design we've done with our N-Scale ST40. So it'll be a solderless speaker installation with 2 connector pins that then will connect, then we'll use the drive essentially, or the frame to connect to the decoder. So that'll make it very easy to move from DC, DCC, or to DCC with sound without any soldering or wiring. The other great thing about this drive is it's been designed from the ground up to fit the old shells. Yeah. So any existing InterMountain F7 drive or F3 drive, because our drives are interchangeable between the F7s and F3s, you'll be able to slide this new drive underneath it. So if you have an older InterMountain F7 or F3 shell that you've weathered, you just can't part with, we're not reproducing at the time, you will be able to, the drives will be available separately. So, we're really excited that we were able to get a drive that mounts under the existing plastic that might already be out there. So like I said, we're just started the quoting phase of this. We should have the quotes and the pricing back in about 2 weeks. You guys are the first to hear from this. We've been working on the new drive now for a very long time, but we just found a factory that we feel is qualified. It's the same factory that made our HO scale auto racks, which we've been absolutely phenomenally pleased with, and is on the final touching phases of our N-scale auto racks, which should be leaving the factory probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So we're also super excited about that. They've done fantastic work. So that's kind of the big announcement today, is that we have that going on. And finally, as soon as we get this one tucked away and get it into production, the next N-scale locomotive project we'll be working on is the N-scale ST45-2. So that'll be, and then down the road we'll be doing then F3s after that. But we expect these to be available, the F7s, probably towards the end of this year, first quarter of 2022 is when we should be receiving them. So that's kind of what we have going on in InterMountain. We have shipping the 4750s, expecting the 5160s any time now. The N-scale bi-level auto rack that model has full etched metal sides, brass end doors, and metal wheel sets. And then the, of course, the F7 A and B locomotives, and then the N, and then will be followed up by the N scale ST45s.
Well, thank you, Glenn. We appreciate that. If you'll clear your screen sharing.
There we go.
There you go. Looks like we are right on schedule, and I appreciate that. What we usually do on these, Glenn, is at the end of all the presentations, we open up for questions.
Oh, great.
But I will also remind everyone that the chat button is down here on your bar at the bottom. And if you click on that, there will be a little column on the right-hand side where you can ask questions. You can talk with anybody else. You can private message anyone else that's online or some general questions. At the end of the session today, we will go to that chat and see if there are questions that are still unanswered. So thanks again, Glenn, and we'll come back to you at the end. Our second presentation today is a layout tour of the Galt line, and this is at the home of Ali Shahriary in St. Louis, Missouri. Ali, are you ready to show and tell?
Yes, I am. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll dive right in. Rail fans, my name is Ali Shahriary. I have been in NTRAK for about 20 years now, into T-TRAK for only 2 years. This is my home layout. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. You'll see it's a combination of T-TRAK as well as some shelf layout designing. You'll see why in a minute, what obstruction I had to go around to make this layout possible. So I'll start my layout tour here. This is the door you would come in when you enter the room, and you can see my selection of T-TRAK modules in various stages of completion. As we pan the room, you start to see the obstruction that I had to get around. This is called the train room. If you ever hear my wife call it the spare bedroom, please correct her. This is the train room. So after we pass the laundry room door, the layout converts to a shelf layout design, 3/4 inch plywood with 2-inch foam on top. And it's just a simple shelf design, 6 inches wide, giving me some tracks to get around the room. There's the door we just came in, and back to the layout. So starting here, this is one of my favorite module corners. It's actually an outside corner with a fall scene. I really like the maze in the back. A river scene. This was done by Dave Halloran, who passed away a year ago, I was fortunate enough to get this module. And next is a back to front module. So what I wanted to do, and if I zoom back a little bit, I wanted to be able to use my outside corners as inside corners. So I constructed these front to back modules to allow me to kind of wrap around and now bring the tracks up front like us T-trackers are used to. This was my first scene here, a grain elevator scene. Still really happy with it. I learned a lot of lessons on this module, and I'll just leave it at that. Here's another scene, a Lego scene. We got these Lego architecture structures, and my son and I are currently making a street scene, and you can kind of see it in progress with the different types of Legos. Because this room is not T-TRAK compliant, there was going to be areas in the room that, a full module would not fit. So I had to build this module. This is a custom module, and in this orientation, it only works on my layout. So this fills the gap to kind of get my layout kind of going around the room. But I designed it with a crossover, and in this orientation, this depth here is a single module depth. So when this is scenic, when it's ready to go, I can take this module in this orientation and use it at a show. When I come home, I use it in this orientation to fill the layout. Next, a true inside corner, and another custom module that I have to use because, of course, again, this room is not T-TRAK compliant. This is a nice time to showcase what I did. Is I used the sliding track joiners. Now, I know it's cheating in T-TRAK, but what this does is this allows me to slide back these parts easily pop the module out, and you can see there's a gap here. That's just going to happen in T-Track sometimes. And then what it does is it opens up the rest of the layout for me to pop apart and take to a train show. Another future module, a double. Here's a double here that I did. This is a War of the Worlds scene. And, you know, sometimes when you have an idea, you don't know how it's going to turn out. And this turned out exactly the way I wanted it to. I couldn't believe that I actually did something well. This module, again, is, this next module is a module of of a fire training facility. And this module was built by David Halloran, again, a true pioneer in T-Track here in St. Louis. But he is a retired fire chief, and I am currently a fire captain. And, you know, upon his passing, he passed away a year ago, like I said, his family wanted me to have this module. I am happy to have it. And anyone who's in the fire service can look at this fire scene and know that Dave knew about firefighting just the way things are laid out. We can tell he was a fireman. The next are two triples. These will be a future intermodal yard. And now a double crossover module that I built. This is a nice time to showcase kind of the things I had to think through when I was designing this layout. So, of course, in T-Track, we know that there's varying depths, and most of my modules are in the 14-inch range. It's just the size that I prefer to do my modeling. But I did this one that was about 8 inches wide. Well, knowing that there's going to be shallower modules, I didn't want the viewer to get preoccupied with this space here, to really notice it. So what I did was, first of all, to back up, everyone in our club has agreed that we paint our front fascia black. We just agreed to do it. It's our club thing. What I did was I painted all of the 3/4 inch plywood underneath black, and then black up to the horizon line of the modules. So when someone sees the layout, they're going to look at it and see the gap there. There's no hiding it, right? But their eye is not drawn to it. I've artfully tried to get rid of that look. And now another, what is now a front to back module to bring us around. And this here is a scene from, well, I'll back up and say that when I was little, we used to go camping at a campground, and it was right on the BN, and we would watch trains and camp, and it was just wonderful to do. One of the features that I like about this module is the searchlight signals. So along the BN, they had searchlight signals, and I wanted signaling for my layout, but nothing really extensive like the things that are out there where things are interconnected. I just wanted intermediate signals. So using an Arduino and some IR sensors, I created a signaling logic. Actually, I had a lot of help from a friend who helped me kind of write the programming. But when a train hits that that sensor, the signal will go red. After a time, it goes amber and then back to green. If the train stays on that sensor, the signal stays red until it's cleared out. Really neat feature. I have a bunch more signals and Arduinos, but as you can tell, a lot of these modules still need scenic and done up. But we're on our way. Haven't decided what to do with this bridge yet, but this gets us around the laundry room door and into this tunnel. This tunnel really is built for to take some abuse. It's right behind the bed, and I had to protect the trains. So I've done what I can that, if the bed hits it, the trains are protected. This is really strongly built. I'll make it nicer, but to be honest, to be brutally honest, this tunnel is to protect the trains to get them around the room. Scanning around, behind the bed, the trains come out on the other side and come into this very narrow yard. My son is 7, and he's helped me a ton with this layout. We like long yards, and that's one of the nice things about InterMountain is, we could snap it down and see what we liked, and then there was a section we didn't like, and we tore it up and made a really long yard. So that's what we wound up doing. Now, I'm not running any trains right now just because of the noise. I want you to be able to hear me. But I can assure you trains run, and they run reliably well. Since we're N-Rail people, since we're T-Track people, I hope everyone can appreciate this double crossover here I made out of number 6 Kato turnouts. You have to be pretty tough and know what you're doing, but I cut the turnouts to make the 33 millimeter spacing, and it gives a really nice double crossover that works nicely. I'll take this time to mention that all of the turnouts on the main line have stationary decoders. All the turnouts can be flipped via your throttle. We found we really don't do that. We just throw them by hand. And here we come to the bridge that is at the doorway. And I kind of, stole ideas again from T-Track, whereas, this length of bridge is really determined by the length of track on top. And again, we see the slider pieces, and let's see if I can do this one-handed. But the correct tools in 2 hands, I can pop these sliders apart and pull the bridge out. And in fact, on the unit joiners themselves, I've clipped the ears off of the respective release point of the unit joiner so that it's even easier to do, but it still holds its track gauge. Next, I'll talk about what powers all these wonderful trains. I use the ESU system with its ESU throttle. So to power all this, first of all, everything's on a smart plug, and you can see the physical switch back here. I can turn it on with that physical switch, or I can just walk in with my cell phone and say, hey Siri, turn on the train layout. So back to the ESU system. The ESU system powers the layout with its ESU throttle on its proprietary Wi-Fi signal, but also I have a Raspberry Pi running JMRI, and that also puts out a Y throttle signal as well, so I can use TCS throttles or cell phones or any Wi-Fi throttle that works with JMRI. Track power leaves the ESU system and heads out over here through first our amp meter, and then is split back to these PSX circuit breakers. These are wonderful devices. I have it set that it gives me an audible alarm and an LED indication if there is a short on the system. Next, it goes to this magic box here. This box inside has 2 HO decoders, one addressed to 12 and one addressed to 11. If I want to run DCC trains, the track signal comes in, goes through, passes through this switch, and heads right out pretty much untouched. But if I want to run the DC trains, which my son calls the old trains, these are trains that don't have decoders or may never have decoders, what happens is the HO decoder in here, when I flip this switch, electricity is routed to the HO decoder inside, and then using the orange and gray wires, I use those wires to feed the layout. What this allows me to do is have a DC train on the tracks, but still control it with the throttles I already have, such as this TCS throttle.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a neat feature to kind of give my layout a little bit of versatility. You can also notice that these plugs on here are the T-Track plugs. I can take this box out and go to a train show and use it if I wanted to. The track bus is 16 gauge going out. I know I'm a heretic, but I did it anyway. And the track bus then splits and goes around the train room. Throughout the train room, there are tridents. Here's a yellow one. There's also a red one in there with it. And what those do is allows me to plug in my T-Track modules into it to give them track power. So there's more around the room that allow me to power my modules. Again, as far as throttles, the part that I really like about model railroading is I geek out. I geek out with how we interact with our trains, and that's a big gap to fill, but I enjoy that. So what we do is we have the ESU throttle that we really like for sound locomotives. The TCS throttle is another wonderful device. But then we also use cell phones. We use cheap Android phones running Engine Driver. These things are like $25, $30 on Amazon, a $5 case, a $3 lanyard, and you're set. You have a good throttle to run multiple trains on a layout. And then we secure them here with just the clips that you might see that people use in their car to hold their cell phones. We use those as stands. And last but not least, video of trains running. That is how we keep our credibility here in this hobby. So right now we have 3 trains running around the room. That locomotive over there is one of the new Atlas Jeep 38s with sound. It's beautiful. Here we have a 4-unit, 6-axle latch up carrying a BN freight train. Pioneer Zephyr sits awaiting, and trains are running. Thanks for visiting. A couple things as some parting notes is when it comes to T-Track, a lot of people believe Unitrack is bulletproof, and that's just not the case. You really have to pay attention to your track laying and how it's sitting, and really inspect the track before you install it. Even with new track, there's problems. So you have to be real careful. A couple other things, like I mentioned, I really get into how we interact with our trains, that space between you and the train. And when you're selecting a DCC system, think about not only how the throttle feels in your hand and how it operates, but also look at the trajectory of that company. Are they stuck in a way of doing things they always have? Have they kind of worked themselves into their own little ecosystem, or do they branch out and work with other throttle systems and JMORI, and what's their computer interface technology look like? So that's just some things to kind of investigate if you're getting into DCC for the first time. Again, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, Allie. It was very well done. And as I said with Glenn, after the end of our presentations, we'll open it up for questions. And people, in the meantime, if you're impatient, you can use a chat. And Allie, if you can check that, you might be able to answer questions, unless you want to hear this next presentation, which I hope you will, because I think it's going to be very good. All right. But before we start that, we've been on for about a half an hour, and what we've learned in the past is when we get about halfway through, it's nice to be able to stand up for a second, stretch your legs, get a sip of water, and make sure we're all staying awake. So let's take about 30 seconds, and everybody kind of stretch, and then Ken will get to you as soon as. Well, I didn't hear a lot of popping joints, so it looks like everybody's in good shape. So let's move on to our main topic today. Ken Harstine up in Massachusetts is going to talk about enhanced prototype modeling with 3D CAD and printing. Sounds daunting, but I bet when he gets through, we're going to say, why didn't I think of that? I can do that too. So, Ken, if you're ready, we're ready to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Does everybody see the slideshow?
Yes. Good.
Okay, so yeah, for some time I've been playing around with 3D. I started with doing some things that I didn't want to try to model, like fruit boxes used for harvesting fruit and things like that. Started with TurboCAD. After a while, the limitations of TurboCAD doing 3D kind of got to me, and some friends suggested SketchUp, and I started moving over to SketchUp. I also experienced a Siemens 3D system at work and discovered I really didn't use it enough to begin to learn all the commands. So I've wound up in SketchUp land, but everybody who does 3D will have to kind of sort out what software will work for them. At the current time, I'm using one of these Anycubic mono SE printers. It's a resin printer that shines UV light through a LCD and exposes little thin layers and builds up your models. It's very, very high resolution. I'd say we may get better in the future, but it's 99% of the way there. It's like when we moved to, I don't know, 24 wire or 300 DPI. So anyway, I'll start on with the first show. So this all shows some of the earlier stuff I started working on. Some of this you might have seen. This hotel was on a module that was in Oregon at the show way back. At the time I started into 3D, the home printers, I just really didn't feel they could do what I needed to do. And I started using Shapeways. The Shapeways is somewhat expensive, but it also, as it turns out, it allows you to learn how to do the 3D modeling without having at the same time to learn how to do the 3D printing. And they're really two separate things that have their own learning curve. But as you can see early on, I really valued the idea that I could do something that was more in line with 3D with prototype modeling. And I continued using Shapeways on these projects. This bridge that's on Donner Pass called the Rainbow Bridge. And of course these snow sheds. At this point I was just building up frames with Shapeways. Later on, with my own printer, I started to do things all up. And these were printed on my printer. Again, doing the sheds. And you can see kind of what the prototype looks like. And then this year, when COVID hit, we had been doing regular operating sessions, and so it really made it kind of difficult to do a lot of scenery because that meant taking down track. But when the COVID hit, I decided, well, now's the time to back up and try to do some scenery work. So my first project was Colfax and doing this station in Colfax. It's turned out to be a pretty large project, quite a few printings before it finally worked out. But basically about maybe a year and 2 or 3 months ago, that's when I started in on this bit. This is further stuff in Colfax. I'd always hoped to do things that were somewhat accurate, but I was also expecting that initially I'd just build up a bunch of kits. But as I did more and more, I figured out ways to do things kind of standardize and actually speed things up quite a bit. So all this stuff is printed on my printer. In this picture here, there's probably about 5 or 6 different prints to get everything together. And roughly the same here as well. This is again in Colfax. I'm still learning how to do shingles, so I chose to do stick-on shingles on this complicated structure rather than try to 3D CAD them in. It can be done, but it gets pretty complicated, and I might, if I did it again, I might do it that way, because I had to really fight to get these shingles to glue onto this weird structure. So I put this slide in here to give you an idea. If you do wind up using SketchUp or probably anything, I've learned from a great deal of some painful learning that basically you should start with simple shapes. You should make them into modules or components and then build up your greater thing out of multiple components. Partly this simplifies things because you can use the same thing over and over again, but also occasionally on really complex parts, Shapeways does weird things to planes when there's a whole bunch of rivets and other things going on. And even though it worked fine with the last iteration, this iteration it became a bunch of fractured triangles. So it's really good to work from simple components. This is something I'm working on right now, and you can see this highlighted section. This is all the same part. These upper ribs are all the same part and all that. So when I discovered in closer examination that I'd made this thing a little bit too tall, it made it relatively easy to go back in and shrink things up. And a lot of stuff you just modify the components separately, and then it's instantly modified everywhere. And then we had a pretty good article in the NRail magazine about 3D models. It didn't talk about some of the that you can download, and you can get some good 3D models, especially if you, as it mentioned, use STLs, which imply that the model actually has been printed. A lot of models out there actually haven't been printed, and they have things that are just way too thin to actually print and don't really make up a solid chunk. In N scale, a thing has got to be at least an inch, preferably 2 to 3 inches thick, to really have to really be able to print. So, and that's the other fallacy of 3D printing. You downloaded this thing, and it could print, but it could print at O scale. But when you print it down to N scale, a lot of parts don't print, or worse, they become floating scrap inside your printer, which, if you don't clean it out right before the next job, could cause further problems. So anyway, this is just a little bit of something to give you an idea of how 3D printing. Now we're going to move on to some of my COVID projects. This is in the town of Soda Springs, which is up near Norden in California. I'm in case you hadn't figured it out, I modeled Donner Pass. So where are we at here? Oh, good. This is in Immigrant Gap. There was a really good picture of this signalman's telegraph officer's house in the South Pacific Historical Society magazine, but I didn't have that available to scan in. But anyway, that's what I didn't even really know this thing existed, even though I was modeling Immigrant Gap. I saw it there. I said, "Oh no, I got to do that. I'll need to do a train order signal." But basically, you can see all this stuff is reasonably like on the prototype. This is, again, this side over here is more things in Immigrant Gap. In my Colfax area, I'm modeling some farms, and as I mentioned, I got into this with the idea of more accurately modeling California farms. So the barn, the water tower are both 3D printed, as well as the fruit boxes here. This is a sheet metal kit, and I believe this is probably Woodland Scenics. And these are purchased on Classic. And this is that British company, also that. And this was my first big 3D project, this caboose. And so this wasn't done during the COVID period. However, this part was done during the COVID period. And because I was able to modularize things, it really went together remarkably quick. In a matter of 3 or 4 weeks, it was basically a workable model. I also 3D printed the stock chute here. I used conventional Woodland Scenics. Fencing, I could have printed my own, but you know, why, if it's available. And that's it.
All right, let me open up this chat thing over here, and let's see what we have. There's an InterMountain discussion. Glenn, you've already answered this to everyone about Jeep 10s. They're still in the line. MKT is coming in on his F7s, and there's a question about metal wheels. Glenn, are you there?
I am, yeah. So
Let's talk about metal wheels a little bit versus plastic, and what you're finding the buying public is preferring.
Oh, absolutely. So right now, we are struggling to keep metal wheel sets in stock. So InterMountain, since its inception nearly 30 years ago, so we've besides the metal wheels on our own rolling stock, we've sold about 12 million metal wheel sets into the aftermarket over that time. We cannot keep them in stock right now, so we've increased our production order. So absolutely, we're committed to both HO and N scale metal wheel sets. And hopefully in the next 6 weeks, we will have, they're on the ship right now. We'll be shipping them back out. We do have bulk wheels in HO. We will be it's our plan, it's our intention to move to bulk wheels in for N scale as well. We're working with our factory over there to get that done.
So is it fair to assume that you're trying to get your stock just to put them on the stuff, on the rolling stock you're selling, that you're not at the point yet where you're going to be marketing wheels after for replacement wheel sets for the plastic ones, older?
Oh no, we've been selling metal wheel sets into the aftermarket, like I said, for decades now.
Okay.
We're just happen to be just in a critical shortage, and this has to do. There's some reasons why this is, but the important thing is then we'll have them back in stock soon.
Very good. All right. Well, does anyone have any questions that they haven't put on chat, or any comments anyone would like to make this afternoon? If not, one of the things that the board is looking at is, as these ZoomTRAK, as we build up an inventory of these ZoomTRAK presentations, we are looking at ways to index those. So you can look for one of the subjects in a ZoomTRAK and access it directly. We have a team that's looking at splitting out the full session into the individual parts where you can access them directly, and we'll have working on some sort of an index to do that. There is a lot going on in NRAIL, and the board works hard at this. It's, even though we do this all as a volunteer thing and we enjoy doing it, but the more people we have that want to volunteer to help us do these projects, the more projects we can get done. And so if you have an interest in participating or helping us with some of the projects that the NRAIL is working on, we would certainly appreciate hearing from you, and we're not shy about putting you to work. So keep us in mind. And again, any other comments or questions before we end today's session? If not, we thank you all again for being with us this month.
Steve, somebody just asked a question on chat. Is the movement next month to the third Saturday permanent?
No. Matter of fact, it's not fixed as the second Saturday. It sometimes varies due to other things like holidays or other events, but it's usually the second. Sometimes it is the third. It is, I think it's on the website when these are out a few months. This was changed because Bruce and I both have a conflict on that original date. And so we slid it a week, and the 19th worked out well and didn't seem to interfere with any of our presenters, and that's why we did it. But we don't specifically use the second Saturday. All right, well, thank you all again for attending, and we hope to see everyone next month. Please tell your friends, remind them that they must be a member of NRAIL to log on to our ZoomTRAK meetings, and we appreciate them joining NRAIL. They can do that by going to the website and click on the home page. It shows them how to get there. So again, thank you all very much, and we'll see you next month.